All right, gonna do a update from my notes for court today. Let's see if I can get the light. Okay, that'll work. Okay guys, so lots of witnesses. I'm gonna read off the witness list today first. I say a lot. I need to stop saying so when people transcribe my videos, I won't sound quite so stupid. Okay, so today's witness list began with an FBI expert. He used to be an FBI agent. He's now some type of a private investigator, and he came forward to testify. So I'm just going to go through the list first of everybody who testified today and everybody who's expected to testify tomorrow, and then I'll do a quick recap. Because dinner's waiting. Look at all those fine people back there. People, no, they're not going to see all because it's their backs. Okay. FBI expert witness testified. Sheriff Mack testified. Shauna Cox took the stand. A woman named Linda Gaynor took the stand. Charmaine Edward, Rebecca Kingen, Rusty Hammond, Diane Holtis, and Travis Welter took the stand. So a full list of people took the stand today. They were ran through pretty quickly before they'd even get done standing up. She was already saying, is the next witness ready? And it kind of reminded me of being in a doctor's office where before you even left the room, they're already bringing in the next patient. That's kind of how her behavior was today. So now we're gonna go over notes. So today the prosecution objected 25, 26, 27, 28 times, and 25. So 28 times the prosecution objected, and 28 times the prosecution objected, and 25 times the judge sustained. Today though, she only sustained one of her own objections. I thought that was an improvement in the past because sometimes she will interrupt more times and sustain objections that came from her. A judge and a prosecutor all in the same seat. It's quite remarkable. Okay, so Linda Jean, so I wasn't there for the first two witnesses. The FBI expert did great. All the ladies behind me said that he was a really good witness. He testified that the training that they did at the facility was all normal and nothing out of the ordinary for people just doing basic training in case they encounter a problem. He was a great witness, everybody said. He was some type of a private investigator. Sheriff Mack, people said he did well. That he said while he didn't support the refuge, he does not feel any laws were broken at the refuge. Then Shauna Cox took the stand. That's when I arrived, and she did great. She actually was able to have the entire video of Lavoie's death played in the courtroom, her recording, since she took the stand. That's the only way it was going to be admissible, and so she was willing to take the stand for that. Overall, it went really well. It was very difficult to sit in the courtroom and have, when this was played, even the overflow room was pretty full. There was not many seats left. So everybody had to see that. There was even children in the overflow room, and they also had to watch that. It was played a few different times during questioning back and forth, and so that was definitely difficult. But Shauna was able to beautifully explain what happened, and you know, how she was just going to the meeting to do video, and then the next thing she knows, she's in the middle of this ambush, and prosecution cross-examined her. They tried to grill her on the fact that Ryan Bundy had a gun, but it really didn't go far because she continued stating that she didn't know he had a gun, and whether it was in the picture or whether he said, you know, where's the gun, it had nothing to do with her, and that they were under fire, that even for him to ask where is the gun is very reasonable when people are firing at you and you have not done anything to entice them to fire weapons at you when you're just sitting in a car. So that went really well. Then a woman came to the stand named Linda Gaynor. I wrote down that she appeared to be very scared, very uncomfortable. She owns a restaurant in the Narrows. They played a video of the property going from the ranch to the Dunbar's property. And you'll remember the Dunbars are the two ranchers who each received $2,000 to let the FBI come onto their property and watch what was going on at the refuge. So the reason that this was important, from her car, she recorded driving from the refuge all the way through their property to their property, and they didn't finish explaining why, but in the next testimonies tomorrow they will conclude that the testimonies needed to be impeached from the Dunbars because what they claimed to have seen from their property was not truly able to be seen. So that will be wrapping up tomorrow. And then a woman named Charmaine took the stand, and she is from Harney County, Southern Harney County. She had great credentials. She went to the meeting on January 6th, a sheriff's meeting, and then after that she decided she needed to go to the refuge for herself and find out exactly what was going on. Then she went back after the meeting on the 7th, back to the refuge again. She then took friends with her. A friend asked if the son could go with her the next time so that he could interview Ryan Bundy. This was a really great testimony. I don't know why my nose is red because it's not in real life. I think it's the light that's on me. That's really funny. At any rate, she was a really great witness, and she was very credible, very believable. They asked her if she was, what she experienced. She said she went to meetings. There was a 3-hour meeting where Ammon Bundy read from a whiteboard. He taught on the Constitution, on their rights. He taught on first claim rights and how to claim the rights that had been taken from them by the federal government. Look, people, hello people. Great people, good people. Okay, so let's see. They said, did you hear talk about adverse possession? She said yes. They objected to that, and it was overruled. She was allowed to finish speaking. Did you organize then a meeting in your own town on January 10th? She said yes, at a school. Yes, at a school to teach on the same things Ammon Bundy had just been teaching her at these other meetings that she had gone to. She was a very good witness. So then she says that at this meeting that she then held in her own school, a school that she sits on the chairman of board for something, and had this meeting, she became a little bit emotional, and she said 50 people showed up to this meeting that she was hosting after she felt like she had learned a lot from Ammon. And they asked if 50 was a lot of people for her, and they said, how many people live in your town? And she said, in my town there are 5 or 6 people. So the fact that 50 people showed up to her meeting was a pretty big deal. And all of it was just from word of mouth. And she drove 200 miles to go to the refuge to listen to Ammon teach. So I think that's pretty substantial. She planned to go to the meeting. She went to the meeting in Grant County on January 26th with her husband, and they planned to go to Ontario and hear Ammon speak on January 28th. And again, this is a woman who had great credentials, who's very esteemed in her community, who sits as the chairman of multiple boards. Even one of them is being some form of a representative, where there's only 17 of these representatives throughout the country regarding grazing rights, and she is one of those people. So overall, really, really great testimony. She shared how the main thing she was there to learn about was adverse possession. Great witness. Then we had Rebecca Jean Kingan. She lives in Fields. She manages a ranch with her husband and kids. Now she's the one who went, they asked her, why did you go? And she said because she wanted to learn what was going on for herself firsthand. And they asked if she took her children, and she said, yes, why wouldn't I? They said, was it safe? And she said, yes, absolutely, it was safe. Did you know Ammon or anybody at the refuge beforehand? No, I didn't. Her son is the one who interviewed Ryan Bundy. The defense asked to then present the picture of her son shaking hands with Ryan Bundy, because that's her big testimony, right? That's why she went to the refuge, was for her son to meet Ryan Bundy and then do a report. And yet I think I might have had this. Yes, Mongolian Sarah. I think I have this set to friends only, you guys. I'm sorry. I'll get it changed to public as soon as I'm done. Anyway, so they wanted to present the report that the son did about what he experienced at the refuge, and they wanted to present the picture of the son holding Ryan, or shaking Ryan's hand, since that's why they went. It was objected as irrelevant. Okay, whatever. How many times did you visit the refuge? She said 2, and then it was objected. This is a witness we're talking about, just trying to explain how many times she went back to the refuge. And it was objected, I'm sorry, and it was sustained. Keep in mind. Okay. Then Schindler asked her, meeting in town, were you there? Yes. Did he drive? Yes. Objection. She went to another meeting in town on January 9th, and Schindler asked if Ammon arrived and if he drove there himself, if she saw him getting out of the car, and that was objected to and sustained. I'm not sure what the prosecution is so concerned about, knowing if Ammon Bundy drove to a meeting in town or not himself. Okay, Rusty Hammond. Now, Rusty's testimony was beautiful. It was short and sweet, but it was exactly what needed to be heard. But it was all these witnesses. You guys have to understand, this is fully like a play. This is like a movie being produced and the judge is the director. So beforehand, and some people have been surprised today as they've listened to this happening, when the jury is not present, they literally go over every witness and they discuss exactly what the witness can say and cannot say. And if they go outside of that scope, it's objected to and sustained. So when these people are coming forward sharing their testimonies, they have a very narrow margin that they can actually speak on, even if it's saying something like, how many times did you go to the refuge? Well, that wasn't agreed upon before that she could say she went there twice. So for this witness, she couldn't say how many times she went to the refuge. Now, I don't know about you, but that's ridiculous, right? This is not a due process. This is not a witness taking the stand and giving their testimony. This is a movie. This is a play, and it's a movie I do not want to watch again, just to make that clear. Okay, so Rusty Hammond took the stand. He was allowed to say one thing. He wasn't allowed to discuss if he ever went to the refuge, if he supported the refuge or didn't support the refuge, or what his family had been through, any of his involvement. This is what he was allowed to say. First they said, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And his answer was, if you let me. Okay, hats off to that guy, right? So then they made him rephrase it and say, yes, he would tell the truth. Then they asked him where he lived. They asked him when he met Ammon, which was December 15th. And they asked him if his family had been threatened, that if they had received threats, that they were no longer to communicate with Ammon Bundy. And he said yes. No further questions. That's all he was allowed to say, is that his family was in fact receiving threats, that they were not to communicate with Ammon Bundy. Now I want you guys to pay attention closely, because Maxine with the Oregonian Live was in there, and I've been encouraging her to tell the truth in her articles. Like when Ammon talked about the loan he took out, I specifically asked her to make sure to state in her article that not only did it come out that Ammon did have this government loan, but that he had also been paying it current and had never defaulted. Well, all she said in her article was, Ammon Bundy admits to taking out a government loan. Okay, is that really what happened? No, I mean, yes, but no, that's not the whole story what happened. And you didn't even say what needed to be said, which is that even though he took out this government loan, he challenged that it was not unconstitutional for him to do that, and he had not defaulted on the loan even though he was wrongfully incarcerated. That was pretty important to report, and she failed to do so. So with Rusty, I'm really hoping that she comes out. Okay, so then after one of the meetings, Maxine asked Rusty in the entryway, I said, Maxine, isn't it great to meet Rusty Hammond? This is him. He only said one sentence on the stand, so I'm hoping you're going to actually put that in your report. That his one sentence was that his family had been threatened, that they needed to stop communication with Ammon Bundy. Because the big report at the beginning was Ammon Bundy has taken over a refuge and even the Hammonds don't want him there. So then she turns to Rusty and she says, Rusty, can I ask you this? Did you support Ammon Bundy occupying the Malheur Wildlife Refuge? To which I encouraged him, do not answer that question. at all, because if you answer that question with what I think you could potentially say that she wants you to say, that is all she will report about you coming to the court, is that you stated you did or did not support the occupation. So he told her he needed to think about his answer and that he would talk to her a little bit later. So if you guys could hold her accountable on Oregon Live and check and see if she at least reported what he said in the courtroom, that would be great. Okay, my food's getting cold. Next witness. Now I'm gonna have to listen to people talk behind me, and that's gonna get difficult. Okay, so Ryan wanted a letter admitted that said the 2 cameras that were taken down were to be returned to the FBI. Hi, you're an update. Say hi. Okay, so Ryan wants this letter admitted that would say, it looks like it was from Lavoie, and it says 2 cameras taken down to be returned to the FBI. Well, the judge, let's see, prosecution objected that it shouldn't be admitted because they don't know who wrote the letter. Well, they don't know where half of the pictures are that the prosecution admitted. Some of them weren't even actually from during the time of the occupation, anyway, some of them are absolutely irrelevant and of people who weren't even a part of the occupation, and they were still presented as evidence. So the fact that they were able to object because they didn't know who wrote this letter and it was sustained is absolutely ridiculous. Brand wrote a note during the court hearing, and he told me that that was Melissa Cooper's notebook and that it was from the occupation time. Let's see. I agree on every level. Oh, the judge kept saying, I agree on every level with Mr. Knight. And I kept thinking, well, of course you do. You both received paychecks from the same signer. We the people. Okay, David Fry is scheduled to testify tomorrow. Then a woman named Diane Holtis took the stand. She was pleasant. She was calm. She was just a great witness. Let's see. I didn't write down where she was from. She's out there in Harney County. Oh, her main objective, not objective, the only thing she's allowed to testify to is that she was in the kitchen with Neil Wampler cooking, and that he was pleasant, and that the only things he ever discussed were the situation of Hammonds and federal government abuse. And that's why he was at the refuge, continuing to state and reiterate this point, there was no conspiracy. They were not there to keep people from coming to work. How absolutely ridiculous of their charges anyway, right? With all the things you would think they would charge him with, they charged him with keeping employees from coming to work. Whatever, employees that didn't have constitutional authority to work there in the first place. Okay, so then they brought Travis Walter to the stand. He was a government witness that they brought up to re-testify for the defense, to be questioned by the defense. Okay, so I noted that. Okay, lost signal for a minute. So this agent, his voice was shaking. He seemed very nervous, very uncomfortable. Let's see, this was Neil's attorney that cross-examined him, or I don't even know what you call it when you bring back a prosecution witness, but Neil Wampler's attorney asked if he remembered seeing what they call quick pics. Okay, for everybody who was at the refuge who wonders if they knew you were at the refuge, let me tell you this. They know you were at the refuge. I promise you, they know you were at the refuge. There is pretty much, there's very few things that went on at the refuge that they don't know about. So if you were there and you think you're being sneaky, they know you were at the refuge. Okay, so they put up on the screen what they called quick pics, and it was little clips of each person they were identifying or that they still needed to identify. So it was this whole, here, I'll show you what my notes are. So the whole screen looked like this, and it had a picture of Sean and then a picture of Sandy, and then 2 more pictures here and 2 more here and 2 more here, and it was just literally boxes written all over this piece of paper that was printed off from the computer. So they had pictures. The first one, they had pictures of Sandy and Sean. They had pictures of Captain Carl. They had pictures of Fish. They had pictures of Nick Fisher. They had pictures of, and they went through all the names, and I think their point was there were many people at the occupation that were not arrested. Some were very involved and were there almost the entire time and were not arrested. But for whatever reason, they decided to go through and they wanted to name each person and find out who the FBI had and had not identified. So they had identified, and some of the names were hard to understand in the back of the room, but some of the names they identified were a Carl Brown, Carl Konings, that's Captain Carl, Travis Cox, Trey Henderson, James Sparks, Jeff Stanek, Rick Borick, Alan Belangi, Jason Blomgren, Joker J, Daryl Thorne, Scotty Wilhelm. They had everything broken down by their sections, the rapid response team, A, B, C, D, headquarters, tower. Each thing was labeled, like for people who think that, anyway, the government knows who was there. So then, let's see, Nick Fisher was head of, I don't know what that says. I think it says the Charlie team. Alan, I can't read Alan's last name. Belongski, Eric Flores, Stephen Brooks, Matthew Deathridge, and then Captain Carl again. And so in the discovery, I think the defense was trying to identify who was known and who was still a question, because this picture that they put up of all these faces were images that they had captured from one way or another, and then they were trying to identify who they were. And so this was concluding that they have since identified everybody they were trying to identify as to who was at the refuge, many of which were not arrested. Okay, let's see. Okay, so then the last thing is they went over whether or not Dwayne Schrock's testimony was relevant. Dwayne Schrock was involved with a lot of the conversations about adverse possession, and the judge at one point stopped the conversation and then later came back to it. And then she said, "What were we talking about with Dwayne Schrock again?" And her statement was, "I can't even find the right adjective to describe the amount of evidence already presented by the defense showing they did not conspire to impede federal officers. Can you please refresh my memory on which witness Dwayne Schrock is?" I just thought that was a beautiful statement, because that was coming from the judge herself, showing there was not an adjective to describe the amount of evidence already presented by the defense showing that they did not they did not conspire to impede federal officers. And while she would say she was just simply making a statement that the evidence has been presented, to me it still spoke volumes that she took the time to say that. Let's see, the reason that Mr. Schrock should testify tomorrow is because all these meetings he was present with Ammon discussing adverse possession, and how as soon as the Committee of Safety was ready, Ammon would be turning over the land to the Committee of Safety after I know I wrote a line about the basics of what they were trying to do. After they had finished organizing records and were able to unwind the transactions, then they would turn the land back over to the Committee of Safety. Let's see, then the defense requested that Dwayne be able to discuss the intimidation that he's received from the FBI from Agent Ben Jones, Jones. Agent Ben Jones apparently has been putting pressure on Dwayne to testify a certain way. So what you guys need to understand is anytime a defense witness takes a stand and they say things that are potentially damning, and maybe even untrue, you've got to understand questions are raised in those of us who have minds that question things. And Dwayne is a perfect example, because he is actually coming out and admitting he has received pressure to testify a certain way. So just because somebody takes this stand as a defense witness does not mean that they're not being paid or coerced by a federal agent to testify and make sure that they say certain statements that will be harming or damning to the defense, even if they're untrue. So he wanted to testify that in his statement that he has been receiving intimidation. And the prosecution objected, saying that he shouldn't be able to testify because it doesn't, I'm getting tired. He shouldn't be able to talk about that because it didn't occur at the time of the refuge occupation. So tell me this, when Matthew Deathridge testified the other day, and the prosecution asked him if he did in fact recently create oh, I'm losing it, a petition to have Judge Brown removed from the stand. And the defense objected, saying, irrelevant, has nothing to do with anything at the refuge. Her answer was, get this, quote, overruled because it goes to the witness's state of mind as of right now. What are you freaking talking about, Judge Brown? Okay, Dwayne Schrock should not discuss the fact that FBI agents have been telling him how he needs to testify. But you allowed the prosecution to question Matthew on a petition he created online this week to have you removed from the bench for not allowing the Constitution in the courthouse because it went to his current state of mind. It's time to retire, sweetheart. Okay. Tomorrow, Dwayne is supposed to help rebut the testimony from the Dunbars about the tower. So that's where that video will come into play that I was talking about earlier. And I think that might be every witness. Good night. Okay, that's every witness. Oh, I'm sorry. They went through and filed a motion last night. So Ammon's attorneys didn't sleep last night. They were literally up all night filing motions and trying to do things because she wanted them to rest today. They've requested tomorrow Dwayne Schrock, Ed Snipes, Angus McIntosh, and then David Fry to testify. And they anticipate being done by noon, and then the rebuttal coming from the prosecution, who wants to bring forth 5 witnesses regarding Bunkerville, and they anticipate it'll take about 2.5 hours. One of the motions said from Ammon's attorneys that they have not had full disclosure about the informants. And once they have full disclosure and know all of the informants that were there, they may call some of them to the stand to testify. But until the informants are disclosed, they don't know. Well, the prosecution's response was, we have disclosed all of the information as stated in the law under, I don't know what it is, the Brady law. We are not calling any of these sources to testify, so we feel we have disclosed all of the things we are required by law to disclose. Well, the problem with that is that the defense might choose to call some of these informants to the stand if they know who they are. And so that motion is being worked out right now between Ammon's attorney and the prosecution. They're supposed to go and meet and discuss exactly how much more information Ammon's attorney wants, what level of informants he wants information on. They made it very clear they believe there were many more informants at the refuge providing information to the government that helped create this idea that they were there and they were dangerous. And so if they know who these informants are, they can call them to the stand and make them under oath testify as to what they were really seeing at the refuge, which will discredit the information they were feeding to the FBI saying that they were dangerous. Or they'll lie and say these people were dangerous, but at this point, as Judge Anna Brown said, we don't even have an adjective to describe the amount of evidence we have had showing they were not dangerous, they did not conspire. So I think it's really important, and I'm really glad that his attorneys filed that motion to try to find out how many more and who the informants are and if they were going to call them to the stand. So yes, we want some of those names, and honestly my heart started to race a little bit when they were discussing it, and it was almost feeling like they were going to have to give some names over. It's almost like a roller coaster at a theme park, you know, where you're like, I think I'm ready for this, but I'm not sure if I'm ready for this. But at this point, you know, I think I've been led to certain people, and I know those people aren't going to let me down, but I know it'll still be difficult to hear some of the people around them who were informants. But nonetheless, I think the information needs to come out, and if they need to take the stand and testify to their actions, I think they should. So that's it. Court tomorrow, first few hours, David Fry, please be praying for him and the other witnesses, and then it's scheduled sometime after the noon hour for prosecution to do the rebuttal, and then of course Monday defense will be able to question those witnesses, and then it's sounding like maybe closing arguments. The prosecution wants 2.5 hours for closing arguments. It'll probably be more like a full day for the defense because they each will get their time, and there's 7 attorneys that are going to want to present closing arguments. So I think that's it. Is there anything I missed, you guys? Let's see. I don't know. I think that's everything. I can look back on. John's good about answering questions and I am not, so I should look and see if there's questions on here. And I will make this public. I'm sorry I made it private, but unless there's any more questions. She also brought up Clive and Bundy's unpaid grazing fees. Yes, she did. And isn't that funny that she didn't state the fact that Clive and Bundy had actually paid his grazing fees to the state of Nevada when it was still around $300,000. The $1 million, much of that is just fines and fees. Nobody wants to talk about the fact that he actually gave the state of Nevada a check for $300,000 that they refused to cash because they said it wasn't their land. He refused to pay somebody who wasn't a lawful owner of that land. He didn't refuse to pay for the land he was grazing on. He knew that the money was supposed to go to the sovereign state of Nevada, not to the federal government, not to the king. It was supposed to go to Nevada, and that's who he paid that to. So if you guys can spread that message. I'm really tired of hearing about Clive and Bundy's unpaid grazing fees and a loan that Ammon Bundy took. Ammon Bundy did not take $500,000 from the government. He took out a loan, a mortgage, basically against a company. If he defaulted, the company would be taken as collateral, and they would get their money back. But he has not defaulted, so can we please quit talking about Ammon Bundy's loan and about Clive and Bundy's grazing fees, because you guys, that is so not even what this is all about. For all you trolls who follow me, it's not what this is about, and you need to stop distracting from the main point. Every witness today testified to adverse possession, and a few of the witnesses got choked up on the stand talking about how they believed that Ammon was going to help right a lot of the wrongs that they had been living under for many years under the federal government regarding land ownership. So it's not about grazing fees with Clive and Bundy. It's not about a government loan with Ammon Bundy. It's a lot bigger than that, and you guys are distracting from the main purpose, and you're lying, and you'll be held accountable for that. So stop lying, repent, and tell the truth. I'm gonna go eat dinner because it's getting cold. Love you guys. Bye.